Welcome to our special episode. Today, you are joined by Nancy Prevost, a passionate advocate for zero waste culture. Nancy will share her incredible experiences and key takeaways from the Impact Conference. Let's dive right in. I would like to start asking you, by participating in a conference, there are a lot of learnings. So what would you say are the top key learnings you got from the Impact conferences?
Yeah, thank you for asking, Joseph. You're so right. I feel that my mind and everything was full when I left the every day at the Impact Conference because so much learning, so much new connections for me. Something that really stuck with me was someone saying circular economy is now a mega trend. And I really liked it because I feel that I'm in that reuse, zero waste movement for so many years. And now to have people on stage in front of 300 people, participants saying like, oh, circular economy needs to be embedded. Zero waste practices is kind of the key moving forward. I was really pleased to hear that. I'm like, yay, finally we're getting there. So I would say that that was really a big learning for me. They were talking about, so many things like zero waste hotels, zero waste practices. And something that I really liked too is another panelist was saying, let's not support non-sustainable practices. So they kind of say all of us, right, the citizens, we can just, with our decisions and our choices and what we buy and where we go, we can just like start moving away from businesses that have non-sustainable practices and support the one who do.
And do you find possible to change or transform the system we're living and working?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big goal, I know, but I think that was the fall. Every year I go to that conference. This is what I learn. It's like by bringing leaders in tourism, hospitality, food industry, there's so many people, students, a lot of students, by bringing everybody together in a room for 3 days. I feel that this is how we create change. This is how we talk about best practices, and then people start thinking. Many examples were giving, like some hotel managers said, wow, I was doing stuff like a certain way for many years. And now that I'm coming to Impact, I'm engaging my staff more. I'm changing my practices. I'm doing more refill options for shampoo and soaps and stuff like that. So I think it's really maybe one step at a time. But yeah, I think it's totally doable to move away from the big corporations who are wasting a lot and polluting a lot and kind of transitioning maybe more to what we call the local economy.
So yeah, in certain way, the managers, for example, who are implementing these actions are seeing their work being like changing, right? The
Mm-hmm.
environment and changing how the relation with the employer, the employees and the
Yes.
customers are changing, right? But sometimes, to be honest, and something that is so mentioned around these actions, it
Mm-hmm.
is that sometimes the work we're doing or is done um, it's not like sometimes it's not like visualized or it's hard to see the impact we're bringing with
Yes.
this war, right? So what would you say are your findings, Nancy, in relations to how to make these actions tangible?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I feel that this is why sometimes with that big climate action work we're all doing right now is sometimes we think we don't do enough or that what we do it doesn't change anything or doesn't inspire others. But I think it's all together when we share again, like just recording that podcast and sharing with the public, the general public. It's like, how do we, empower to do those small steps? What you make me think was, at the conference, they decided to serve only vegan food. And they ask in advance as well, like how many people will stay for breakfast, lunch, dinner. Like by having really specific numbers, they were able to reduce the food waste. And by not serving meat, they were also able to reduce a lot of greenhouse emissions. And they were calculating data and sharing them live with the public, with the participants. And I thought that was a really tangible way to see how we can create impact. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I feel that, yeah, when we plan events, even if it's family reunions, maybe by having more vegetarian and vegan options, we think it doesn't matter, but in the end, it does.
Yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned, like if you measure your
Mm-hmm.
action, or you like, in this case, okay, we are reducing the carbon emission because this food is vegan, and and
Yes.
and maybe some comparison, right? But the only thing, Nancy, that comes to my mind is sometimes when we talk about measurements, sometimes numbers are cold, right? And
Mm,
some people are not get really connected with this. Now, how to embrace that, how to change that measurement to avoid the cold numbers.
that's very true. And I'm not really a data-driven person, so I'm glad you say that. I get that a lot with my small business when we ask for funding, right? And we meet with people. They're like, give us data and numbers. And I'm with you. I feel sometimes it feels really cold. It's like, oh, yeah, we reduce by that percentage. Does that mean anything? It's a little bit hard. So, to answer your question too, I really like someone from the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. Keith was on stage, and he was asking all of us, like, how do we measure success? So it's a bit to your point. It's like, can we change our metrics for success? Can we support? Yeah, when someone, like, it's not about maybe creating more products or having more visitors. It might be about, like, how can we serve the community better? So I think you're right. Like, when we share those stories, maybe of, for example, like a tourist city like Victoria, sometimes they say, like, it's not about just bringing more tourists, always more cruise ships and stuff. It's like, how do we make sure that people have a beautiful experience that serve the tourists but also serve the community? So by not overwhelming the system, by not overwhelming restaurants, like, it's almost about creating balance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, as you mentioned, it's more like qualitative, or kind of with the stories, because also stories inspire people, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
if we want to bring more people into this process of do better and improve their lives and the impact they have, I think stories is a great way to inspire them. Now, about talking about inspiration, Nancy,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure these actions and these stories you heard has bring you some ideas of what's next, right? What could be done with this? What are your ideas or thoughts about how can be this like promoted?
Yes. And because we know each other from school, I was impressed that many speakers on the stage will be referring to students' project. Like, I know someone at Railroads who is working on edible cups. And I have one of those cups that you can drink your coffee and eat the cup after. And it was mentioned on stage. I was like, wow, those big leader that everybody's looking at for answers, sometimes they were just sharing student projects. So I was like, that's cool that what we do at school sometimes can make kind of ripple effects. So that was one. I think the reducing waste, as we know, with the disposable coffee cups, the containers, to go containers were brought up a lot. And beautiful examples I learned is they are doing in Ottawa the full city. So it's the city and the destination management organization. They came together and now they ask all hotels to freeze the food after, let's say, you go for a buffet at breakfast. They ask everybody to partner with La Table des Chefs, which is from Quebec. And they're asking their hotels, freeze the food, keep it, and then we'll give it to local shelters and community services. So this is something I've seen on a really small scale happening in Victoria with the Empress Hotel. But to hear that the full city of Ottawa plus the tourism Ottawa came on board and asked like all businesses to do that, I find it very inspiring because, as we know, reducing food waste can be such a beautiful way to reduce emission, but also to help the community. Other examples, yeah, the zero waste hotels, I'm very interested. Like they really try to find a way of like, yeah, just getting to that kind of carbon neutrality, having people, everything is served on real plates, having people for, yeah, trying to reduce, no water bottles in the rooms, all those things, reusing the soap. There's a beautiful organization here in Victoria, Soap for Hope, that they will collect all the used soap from hotels and then I don't know how they do, but they transform them into new soaps. So that was also mentioned on stage. Like, how can we collect waste? This is the basic of circular economy. Actually, it's like, how do we collect waste from our restaurants, hotels, events, and then we transform them into something useful?
Actually, now that you're mentioning all this, something that is like mentioned, something that is brought,
Mm-hmm.
is one unfavorable situation that exists right now and we are facing right now, that is food security, right? So
Yes.
and I'm wondering, do you have an experience or do you have any experience related to some actions to engage a kind of solutions like for this critical problem?
Yeah, that's an important one. I love that again at the conference, they had on stage people from Mustard Seeds, Cool Aid Society, Big Wheels Burger. So it was like, to bring people like people doing the work with the community and the people in need and marginalized population. I find it so smart as a as the conference did it because again we were able to hear the real kind of data and to all be moved by like, wow, we should be able to do better. Like the Cool Aid Society, they mentioned they're serving 1,000 meals per day. And this is one organization in Victoria. Like, can you imagine on a national scale how big the need is? So food security, I think, like I'm so proud to volunteer at the food garden. You remember as well at Royal Roads because I feel that this is by educating people how to grow their food. And I think when we volunteer, sometime we can bring some food home. I think this is really the kind of the next step. And I hope that community gardens, more hotels are having their little green space. So I hope that that will continue, right? That the stuff that people grow can be shared with the community. So I think that can be on a small scale, maybe how we fight food security. And again, making sure that the food that is produced is not getting wasted because I think it's something like 50% of the food from grocery store that we buy in Canada that will end up to waste or to compost. So we really need to change that. And also, something that comes to mind from your previous question is in Revelstoke, they were saying that they do a program. It's not about food security, but it's about engaging people. So in Revelstoke, around what is it? It's the holiday we have, Thanksgiving that we have in October. They offer tourists to come to the city, volunteer, and then they get a $400 complimentary for their hotel or restaurant. Like they kind of get a $400 voucher that they can use within Revelstoke. So that kind of initiative, right, can make so much, yeah, ripple effects. Let's think in Victoria, if we can bring people to volunteer more at the shelters, at the community services, at the food gardens we have, and then tourists get an incentive in money. I just feel that there's way more connection being built than just transactional, like, oh, I go visit somewhere, I do a few things and then I come back home. I feel that when we can connect the tourists with local initiatives or like for example at Revelstoke that will be like taking care of the riverbed or going on a trail and making sure like kind of making sure that the infrastructure of a trail are good to go. Like I just find it so good. We bring people on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, how amazing one thing that you're mentioning about engaging others,
Mm-hmm.
because if you see the whole picture, you are not just impacting in one single problem because the problems are not by themselves. For example, if you try to face how you mentioned the food security problem, with volunteering, with going to community gardens. So you are not just facing that specific problems. What I'm seeing here is like more wide things that are coming and positive impacts, right? For example, community creation, right? Because
Mm,
it is seen, it has been seen that when you create a community, you are more willing to do better and make better decisions because you understand how your decisions are impacting your community, right? And how you can bring better things or better actions for that community
yes.
that you're working with. So that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Nancy. And just to finish this conversation, I want to say thank you for all sharing with us all your learnings and all the things that are coming, because I'm sure this is going to bring some inspiration and create this community, right? That you are mentioning, and that is going to have an impact, positive impact, and maybe create a feedback loop to create like
Yes.
more actions and more solutions to other problems, right?
Yeah, no, I'm so grateful that you took the time to talk with me. And you know that conference for 5 years now, when we end the conference, we have a session and it's called Unite, Commit, and Act. So everybody in the room is invited to share how they will unite with their team or colleagues or family and friends, what they commit to and what they will act on. So it's almost like we take a pack and then we're like, okay, in a year from now, we'll report back. So I hope, Joseph, and what we're building together, and if we can bring more people to the conversation too, it's like, how can we build something together, better together, and that can look so many different ways. So I'm very open for feedback and ideas from the public.
Thank you so much, Nancy.
Thank you. Have a good day.